Hello Stampers, my name is Linda Bedinger and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator in Denver, Colorado. I'm so glad you could join me this afternoon. Today I have a little bit of a different video for you. I have 3 cards, and Stampin' Up! Has what they call 3 levels of stampers. The beginner or the more new to stamping stampers, the casual stamper, and the avid stamper. And so we're encouraged often to put together projects that reflect those 3 different approaches to coming to a card. And I'm back to the Forever Greenery suite. I'm afraid it's going to be every other one for a while. It's so much fun. But I decided to tackle this from that sort of point of view, and I could use your help. I've watched Connie Stewart, and she has this series where she calls it Now, Wow, and Holy Cow, which I think is quite clever. I wish I'd have thought of it. I thought maybe something like simple, jazzy and snazzy, or snazzier, or something. Perhaps you have a suggestion that I could call this series. So I'm going to start off with my simplest card, and we'll make that, and then we'll make the next 2 so you can see stepping it up using basically the same elements. All right, let's just get started. Okay, here is my first card. And it's sort of challenging when you stamp the way I do, which is really almost elaborate, lots of layers, die cutting, and all of that, to come up with a card that is simple and yet is attractive enough for me. And this is my first card, and it is quite a simple little card, and all you need is a card base. So I have a Whisper White card base here that is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and that is all. It's basically just ink and paper, and because I couldn't help myself, I put a few rhinestones and a little tiny bow on here. But what we're going to do is make this card, and if you were in a hurry and had to make a bunch of thank you cards or something like this, I like this well enough that I would be okay with sending this out as something that came from me. It's simple, yet it's elegant, and it's interesting, and it has all of the elements that I like more than, like 2 or 3 colors. And on the inside, I just put a small amount of stamping to go along with what we're doing. So we are going to stamp directly on the front of this card, and I have a little piece of scratch paper here to do that. The inks that I'm using are Pear Pizzaz. I'm using Blackberry Bliss. Let's see, and I've been using Pretty Peacock, very similar to what I did in the last one, although this time I also threw in some Mossy Meadow to get some depth in the leaves. So let's just get started here. And I have all of my stamps mounted here from this suite and a couple of sentiments. And I'm going to go ahead and start with the Mossy Meadow. And the Mossy Meadow is nice and dark. And so I'm going to do some at full strength, and others I'm going to do at sort of half strength. So this, I love the way this looked kind of hanging down from the top, although this one looks like it's sort of off on its own. So I want to aim it a little bit more from the corner and go ahead and put a dark one down, and maybe another one over here. And then, let's see, I've got my chamois here. So I'm going to keep cleaning up as I go, because I think I may want to use some of these again to fill in and pick up some other colors. Now, the next thing I have is I want to do this, and I've decided that somebody said to me that they might be eucalyptus leaves, and I think that might be right. Well, in this case, I'm using them almost like a berry. And so I'm going to take some of these and I'm going to make them quite prominent here by putting them, and it's okay with me if some of the leaves go over the top on this. And I'm going to set this one to come a little further down the page, and maybe a hint of some way up here at the top, and we'll see what else we need. Then I want to take this little bunch of leaves here and these, and I think that what I'm going to try and do is put these in Pear Pizzaz, and I'm going to tuck this little bunch right up here in the corner and let that just fill that corner in. There we go. I think that's perfect. Now I'd like to have some more kind of hanging down like they're coming from behind this, and in order to do that I simply used a post-it note to make some room to see if I could make this look like it was coming from behind some of this other stuff. And there we go. Now that one I could have gone ahead and put the rest of that stem down. Well, I think I'm going to cover it up with some of these. And this one I think I can put right in here and have them coming down over some of the top. And I need to fill in here, and I'm thinking the way to do that might be with this little one here. There we go. And then just maybe some right across here. There we go. And then I'm going to put a few more right over there just to give that a little shape. All right, so that is the stamping I'm going to do. Then I have my happy birthday stamp from Here's a Card, and I thought I would do that in this Blackberry Bliss color and see if I can do a straighter job than I did on the original card, and put that happy birthday right down here. Not much straighter. And then on the inside of the card, I'm going to put a little bit of this leaf down here in the corner, and then I'm going to put some more of that leaf, and we're going to do what we did with those from the other day, and that is get a little bit of that darker color just kind of around the edges of this one. And I'm going to set that down right down here on the bottom of the page. There we go. And that way I can put this Blackberry Bliss bunch of leaves or berries or whatever we're going to call them right in the middle there. All right, now you see what happened to me there? That did not stamp fully on there. And so what I'm going to do is get a blender pen, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of that Blackberry Bliss ink, and I'm going to fill in some of those berries on down on this, just to make the one fill in and the rest of them look a little bit more believable, and do them all that way. So there we go. That is basically my card. Isn't that fun? And so, let me close up some of these inks. Doing this process, I will tell you that I did get myself completely covered with ink as I was getting ready for this. It's a lot of dark inks to have out on your table. All right, so I'm going to set those inks aside there, and here is our original card for this one. And I have my little bit of gold twine, and this twine is part of the Forever Greenery ribbon pack that's on page 161 of your new catalog. And I thought just this little hint of ribbon down here at the bottom, and then I think this ribbon is very interesting because you see how this ends fray? It just pulls apart. Isn't that fun? So I'm going to do that on purpose on both sides of this by using a pokey tool. You could use take a pick tool and just pull those little pieces. You see what I'm doing? Just putting the edge into the ribbon and pulling away. And it frays the edges of those, and I think that's so cute. So what I'm going to do is take a glue dot, and I'm going to take this glue dot and roll it on top of itself, and then on top of itself again, until I get almost like a little sausage, and roll that between my fingers. And then I'm going to stick my bow knot on that little piece that is like a little sausage, and put that in place on my card right under my happy birthday. And that'll help keep that knot closed as well. And there's my little ribbon to go under the happy birthday. And then, just to dress it up a tiny bit, I took a few rhinestones. Now you could take gold, well, in fact, let's do that so that it matches the gold ribbon. And these are the gilded gems, and they're in the gold like the ribbon, and so maybe if I use that instead of the silver rhinestones, it would make a little bit more sense. And what I did was I just put a few of the gems in amongst the leaves here, coming down the page. And I thought it added just a little bit to the plainness of this card. And so there we have it. That is the card, the first card in our grouping today. And it's got a little bit of stamping on the inside, and it's got stamping on the outside. It's a happy birthday. It could be a hello, how are you? It could be a get well. It could be a thank you. But very, very simple. And what they're calling this is simple stamping. And so this is my contribution to simple stamping. So that is our first card. Now, the second card, by its nature, goes just a little bit further. And so that is this card for me. And this card has those same colors stamped on it, but it's got a little bit of ribbon trim and some cardstock trim here, and it's got a raised label. So a little bit more complex. It's got layers for behind the card, and these layers aren't all the same. So for the one we're making today, I have done that. I have made those card pieces the same. So I have my Whisper White base 8.5 by 5.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4, and then I have 2 pieces 4 by 5 1/4 in Pear Pizzaz. Then I have this little piece of old olive ribbon, which is in the, I can't remember the name. I'll put it up on the screen for you. And then, then I have 2 pieces of white that are cut 3 3/4 by 5. And this layers will be the same on the inside and the same on the outside. So we're going to do our stamping on these pieces of white. And then I've got my little pieces of ribbon cut out here. And then from the Stitch Sweetly die set, this little medallion, which I thought was such a pretty touch with its stitching, and it has You Made My Day on it. And You Made My Day also comes from Here's a Card. All right, on to this. So this time we are going to do our stamping down the side. And this time I'm going to start with the berries, so I know right where they're going to go, and I will put my greenery around them as we go here. So this one's got a couple of layers on it, and that makes it maybe just a little bit more complex. So there's a group of berries, and then I'm going to put some right down here on that same edge, a little bit lower. And maybe just a touch of them down there. Okay, now then, this stamp looks to me like it would go easiest between the stamps. So I'm going to put that into the Pear Pizzaz, and then I'm going to use a dauber, I think, with the Pretty Peacock, just to dab a little bit of color on this. And I'm going to just kind of hit the edges of the stamp, the stem, maybe up the center. And so I'm going to put that right in here. And there we go. Isn't that pretty? It looks two-tone. All right. The simplest one to fit in the others is this one. And I'm going to put that on the bottom edge in just the Pear Pizzaz. And then I think I can get away with this little larger one, although I'm not going to put the whole thing down. And I'm going to do that same thing with going around the edge of that stamp, down the center, and just around the edges of the leaves with a little bit of that Pretty Peacock. I think it makes everything look so much more interesting. And I'm going to put those leaves right up here at the top. And there we go. And, you know, on this, I don't think I'm going to overlap things. And I think I like this arrangement a little bit better. Now, what I can do is take this little stamp, put it back in this, and stamp off, and then just put a little faded bunch of leaves behind. And I'll bring that up so you can see the effect of it. It gives you fullness without very much color. There we go. All right, can you see there? What I've done is I just, because it's stamped off a bunch of times, you can't really see it much, but it adds to the fullness of the way this looks. Okay, so now on the inside of this card, we also have some stamping of these flowers. And so what I have is, again, this, and I need my Blackberry Bliss back in here to put my berries kind of in the corner. And then I'm going to use this little stamp, oops, not in Blackberry Bliss. Let me get that out of here so I don't, I'll need it again, but not right away. And then I'm going to do that same thing with this one, where I just add a touch of that pretty peacock around the side here. And I'm going to stamp that in there. And then I'm going to stamp it one more time here. And then I'm just going to stamp off one more time and just put the shadow of some leaves in a couple of these other spots there. And I think that I really like the way that looks. It looks faded, looks like it's nice and full, and yet the effect is absolutely very, very faint. Okay, so that is that much of the stamping for this card. Now we have left this, and I found this little stamp in my Here's a Card that says, "You made my day," but there's also a thanks, and that one might, and just to do something different, I'm going to grab the thanks stamp. So there is my thanks. I'll pick that up, and I'm going to do that again in the Blackberry Bliss. I think that looks the best. And so put my thanks right here in the center of this little medallion. Oh, it couldn't be more crooked. Let me try it on the other side here. The stitching isn't quite as distinct, but that's much better. Okay, now then on this one, I'm going to take a little bit of that pretty peacock and go around the edge of this just to give it a little bit of distinctive look to it here, set it off a little bit. Now I'm going to add some dimensionals on this piece and have that all ready to go on my card front. Now, in order to give this also just a tiny bit more distinctiveness, is I'm going to take some of this Blackberry Bliss, stamp off, stamp off, stamp off. This is one of the stamps in this set, and I am just going to add a few splatters right along the edge there, and again around here. And you'll notice I have not re-inked. There we go. Just a little bit of color, and I think it's a little bit more interesting that way. Okay, so now we're ready to put this one together. Let me get my layers and my card front. So now I have this to mount on this one, this mounted on here, and now that is ready to go on the inside of my card. There we go. Then our front, and what we're going to do before we do anything else is, let's see if I mount that to this, and that is cut that way. Okay, so this is going to go mounted on the green first, the Pear Pizzaz. Okay. Oh, I think that's so pretty with that little border on there. And then these pieces are going to go on the front of my card. Now I've got a little piece of this lace that we've got in the catalog, and I'm just going to put a little bit of this dot runner down on the back of this so that the scallops for my ribbon face the stamping. So there, and then just anchor that around the back. Now then, on this piece of Blackberry Bliss, that's going to go from the top to the bottom of the green piece, and we're going to just add a bead of snail kind of all along it here and put it in place over the edge of the ribbon and right to the top of the green, and then all the way down and to the bottom of the green. And often I cut these just a smidge long and then cut to fit. Okay, there we go. And then I have this pretty piece of old olive ribbon, and I want that little piece of Blackberry Bliss to just be a small sliver, so no more than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm actually putting this ribbon right on the edge of that Blackberry Bliss strip, and I cut that strip to be 1/2 inch. So this is going to make that strip about 1/4 of an inch once I put my green ribbon in place along here. There we go. And then I have my thanks, which is outlined in the pretty peacock. I might want to add just a little bit of the Blackberry Bliss, since that's the predominant color. And got a dauber here that will do that. And so I'm going to also cover this so that it's got little bits of Blackberry Bliss and little bits of the peacock showing in the sponging. And there we go. Now I think it's representative of what's going on, and I think that looks real good right up there. It kind of depends on placement where you end up, how you end up stamping the card, which looks the best. So there we go. There's my thanks. That's all ready to go now on the front of the card. Putting a little extra glue on those pieces of ribbon. And there is our second card. Now, that's not as plain as the first card, but still very attractive, and with a few more layers it's a little bit more involved. And so then let me show you our third card. The third card is the one that went a little over the top and it's this card. Move some of these things out of the way. And so this card has a little bit of this ribbon or twine that I wound around the card. It's got a few gold elements here. It's got some die cut pieces, and it's got layers, but it's really not terribly complex if you look at it. It is the card base, which is in Blackberry Bliss, which is 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4, and then it's 2 layers, 4 by 5 1/4 in Whisper White, 1 for the inside and 1 for the outside. And there's some stamping and some die cutting going on this one, and that is sort of the third level, if you will. So let's get to stamping to put this one together. So what I've got stamped on either end of the front of this, and I'll bring back my scratch paper. And because I'm going to layer over the top, I can afford to put some of these pieces a little further down on the page. So I'm going to get my Pear Pizzaz ink, and I'm going to get my dauber with my pretty peacock, and I'm going to be fairly heavy-handed on this one, getting some of that pretty peacock down on that. And I'm going to put this piece right about here coming down the page. And there, isn't that pretty? Oh my gosh, this stuff is so pretty to work with. Then I'm going to do this one in Pear Pizzaz, and I'm going to go around the edge of it with Mossy Meadow. And on this one, I'm just going to kiss this stamp to the Mossy Meadow, just what they call rock and roll, just around the edges. And I'm going to put that one right up in here. There we go, with the dark edges on it. Now I'm going to put this one, which we haven't used yet, which is, and I'm going to do this one all in Pear Pizzaz and set it right down here between the two other stamps. And there you go. So now I have die cut ahead of time all kinds of pieces. And I have one of the berry stems here, and I have, I wanted to show you, I'm using some of the gold elements from the Forever Gold Specialty Designer Laser Cut paper. And so what I did with mine is I keep lots of my my scraps in these very thick ticket holder packets. I love them because they're substantial in size and girth, so they hold quite a bit. And then inside I put all of the square pieces into one plastic. I put the large leaves in another. I put, I took the strips off of the end because I thought it might be kind of fun. Sometimes I know I'm going to want a strip of this. I put all of the label backings in one, and then all of the small leaves in the other. And so I think that what I want is, out of this package, I want this little gold leaf bunch here. Okay, now all of these can go in here. They're not going to get stuck to anything. They're not going to get torn, and I can get to them right easily, and I have a place on my desk where they can just go. All right, so what we've got is this, and I took my snips and I cut off just the edge on this wide piece that comes away on both sides. And so now I've got those two little pieces of gold. We're going to keep those. There they are. And then this, I thought, maybe without this huge tail, coming down over these made some sense. And so I'm going to use my dot runner to put a little bit of snail on the back side of this in a couple of places, and put this into place right up in here. All right, now then, I've got a set of my berries and a couple of leaves. And I'm going to use these smaller leaves, I think, here. And I'm going to put some dimensionals and put these into place. Okay, so that's the upper corner done. Now down here, I'm adding some more greenery, and I'll be putting in some of the pretty peacock accents on some of these leaves down here. There we go. And then I have another one of these berry sprigs cut to go flat right down here on the bottom. And so I'm just going to add some snail and put that into place right down here, and then trim away the pieces that I don't want to extend. Okay, there we go. Now I am going to take my Blackberry Bliss ink again and my splatter that came in this Stamp Off several times, and just go around these sprays of flowers. I think it definitely adds a little something. There we go. All right. So that is the front of the floral piece done. Now I have a little piece of Whisper White that is cut 1 inch by something, probably 3 1/4. And then I have a stamp, and on here it is With Gratitude. And this stamp comes in this greenery stamp set. And so I'm going to put it as close as I can get it to one side and try to get it down straight. And then, using my mini trimmer here, I am going to just cut this off so that it's just a little rectangle. There we go. And then I've got this little piece of Blackberry Bliss, and I thought this is a cut to fit, so it depends on how much room you leave on either side, but I didn't want but a tiny little margin around this sentiment. So this is ending up being about 1 1/8, just to get some little tiny border around it. Let's see how straight that cut. Pretty good. Okay, so now I can just go ahead and add some snail onto this and center that on my piece of Blackberry Bliss. There we go. Maybe I'll put a few of those splatters on it as well, just to give it a little texture. All right, so now this is ready to go on here. Now this ribbon, what I did was I put some dimensionals on the back of this sentiment. And I'm going to put more than I need, because some of it I want to just kind of hang on to the ribbon, and some of it I want to hang on to the card. So I'm going to put quite a few dimensionals on this, and then see if I can't get a pattern I like out of this twine around the back of this card. So I'm going to start with one end off the card and make a loop around here, down here, maybe a loop up here. Okay, that's what I've got. And then I'm going to fray all of the edges of this ribbon all the way back to being on the card, or coming out from behind the card. Okay, now I think this is ready. Oh, I had these two little gold pieces that I wanted to stick down here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add just a little bit of snail to the back of these pieces. This is where a dot runner can really be helpful, because it doesn't put a full bead of sticky glue down, and you can pick up an edge, put it in place, and use your glue eraser over the top of it for any residue. There we go. All right, that's going to do what I want. Now this piece is ready to go on right across here. There we go. All right, now I'm using those same faceted, what are they called again? Gilded gems. And on this one, I just put several right around the message and the ribbon. So I'm going to do that again. Going to use a couple of the larger ones, then put a small one on here and a couple more small ones right on the card like that. Okay, there is the front of our card ready to go. Now we have a little bit of work yet to do on the inside piece, here is my inside layer, and on this one I stamped and then put some of the die cuts and a little bit of the gold in here. So that's what I'm going to do. And I think what I'm going to do, this one is a fairly full looking leaf. So I'm going to add that in the Pear Pizzaz in this corner. I guess I need my scratch paper back here. And I'm going to put one right down there, and then one right up there. All right, now then, I have my berry sprig that I'm going to just add some glue and set that right down there in the center. And then I will go back to my package gold. And I put all of the smaller leaves in a package, and I think this one would work just beautifully. All right, so I'm going to snip off some of the tail. And before I let this get completely set down here, I'm going to pick that up and stick that gold behind it so that it is coming out from behind the berries. And I'm going to trim this off, and there we have our sort of over the top. Now, I didn't on this one put any of the splatters around this, but I'm thinking that that makes some sense, and since I got a few little pieces of ink over on that side, I'll put some splatters over there, and there is the inside of our card. Okay, so now I'll get my card base back, and I always cut more leaves than I think I'm going to need, and then I stick them away because I know I need a whole envelope full of die cuts from this series because I'll be using these leaves everywhere. So it never hurts to have a few extras. So there we go. Now I'm going to add my snail on the back of this card. And this is the piece that goes on the inside. So there we go. Isn't that just pretty? Oh my gosh, that is just lovely. And this isn't stuck down, and you know, it may bother me later, but right now it doesn't. I like the extra dimension that it gives, that it's just separate from the rest of the card. All right, now then this piece is going to go down on the front of my card. I've got an edge sticking up and over on one of those berries, and I think I'm just going to leave it. I'm not going to cut it to fit. And there we go. There is my sort of avid stamper or over the top or whatever we want to call it card using basically those same pieces. Now, let me bring them back so you can see. So this was the third card. This is the second card. So this one is the second card. Isn't that pretty? And then this one is the first card. And, you know, I'm pretty happy with all of them. So if you have a thought about what I could call this kind of a series, good, better, best, the hill, the foothills, and the peak, or something like that. I don't know. I've been struggling trying to figure out what to call this series. I think Connie got the right thing right from the beginning. But I really am thrilled with this basic card, because that takes no time at all, and yet I'd be happy to have this come from me. I'm very picky about cards that I send out, and have been known to throw them away if I don't think they meet my standard. But I really do like this little card. I think it's very pretty, very simple. And you saw how long it took to make. There's only one piece of paper here and a little bit of stamping, and they call it simple stamping. And then this one, which is kind of the middle ground, it's got a bit of stamping on it, but a few extra pieces here and a die cut. And then this one, which is a bit, although again just a single layer, but lots of layers of leaves and die cuts and greetings that are raised and so on. So that is my project for the day. Thank you so much for stopping by my YouTube channel today. I do so appreciate it. And if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, I'd love to be your demonstrator, or you could join my team. This month, in the month of June, there is a special going on to join Stampin' Up! Your normal $125 worth of product for $99. Plus, they're calling it a bundle bash. You get to pick a bundle of your choice out of the new catalog. You know, depending on which bundle you picked, that would add a substantial amount to your to what you get for joining. And it's not, in fact, I talked to a lady this week. It's not joining so that you can do this. The lady I talked to is fairly a beginner, and she's really wants to get back into it. And when you have a lot to buy, she's got a few of the inks, a little bit of the paper, a few tools. I mean, she's going to be buying fairly heavily within her budget for the next year to get all of the things that she wants to get. Well, to do that without the discounts, you're leaving money on the table. And so she's considering it, not because she wants to be a demonstrator and have card classes or do videos, but because she wants the discount, because she's got a lot to accumulate. So it's something to think about. My telephone number is always listed below the video, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. So thanks again for stopping by, and I'll be back soon with more cards, more projects, and more tips. Bye.